What if I told you that one man changed the way people think? Not with an army, not with money, but simply by asking questions. More than 2,300 years ago, a curious boy was born in ancient Greece. He would grow up to teach one of history's greatest kings and lay the foundation for modern science, logic, and education. His name was Aristotle. How did an ordinary boy become one of the greatest thinkers in history? And why are his ideas still taught in schools and universities today? Stay with me, because Aristotle's life is full of curiosity, wisdom, and lessons that can still inspire us today. Welcome to English Orbit, where you improve your English through inspiring biographies, true stories, and historical mysteries. Every story is written in clear and simple English to help you improve your vocabulary, listening skills, and pronunciation. Now let's begin. A world full of questions. More than 23 centuries ago, Greece was not one country. It was made up of many independent city-states, each with its own rulers and traditions. Among them, one city was famous for learning, Athens. People traveled there to study philosophy, mathematics, politics, and art. Great thinkers gathered every day to discuss life's biggest questions. What is happiness? What makes a good leader? How can we discover the truth? At that time, the greatest philosopher in Greece was Plato. His famous academy attracted students from all over the Greek world. But before Aristotle became one of those students, he was just a curious boy growing up in a small town called Stagira. A curious child. Aristotle was born in 384 BC. His father, Nicomachus, was a royal physician who served the king of Macedon. Because of his father's work, Aristotle learned something very important from an early age. Instead of making guesses, doctors carefully observed nature. They studied the human body, animals, and plants before reaching conclusions. Young Aristotle watched all of this with great interest. He learned that every problem had a cause, and every answer needed evidence. Unlike many children, he never accepted simple explanations. Whenever someone made a claim, he asked, "How do you know?" That simple question would shape the rest of his life. The boy who never stopped asking why. Aristotle loved learning more than anything else. He wondered why birds could fly, why fish lived underwater, why the seasons changed, and why people behaved differently from one another. Some adults admired his curiosity. Others became tired of his endless questions. But Aristotle never stopped asking. He believed that every plant, every animal, and every person had something to teach us, if we were willing to observe carefully. Thousands of years later, scientists would follow the same idea. Observe first. Conclude later. A difficult childhood. Life suddenly became very hard. While Aristotle was still young, both of his parents passed away. He became an orphan. Fortunately, a family guardian named Proxenus took care of him. Instead of forcing Aristotle into ordinary work, Proxenus encouraged him to continue studying. Sometimes, one person's belief in a child can change the future of the world. As Aristotle grew older, books became his closest friends. Whenever he found a scroll, he read it. Whenever travelers shared stories from distant lands, he listened carefully. The more he learned, the more he realized how much he still didn't know. That made him humble. He understood that true wisdom begins when we admit there is always more to learn. The journey that changed everything. When Aristotle turned 17, an opportunity arrived that would change his life forever. He traveled to Athens, the greatest center of learning in the ancient world. The journey took weeks. He crossed mountains, villages, and dusty roads, dreaming about the city he had heard about since childhood. When he finally arrived, Athens amazed him. Markets were full of people discussing ideas. Teachers gave lessons in open spaces. Artists, philosophers, and scholars filled the streets with conversation. For Aristotle, it felt like paradise. Then he stood before the most famous school in Greece, Plato's Academy. He entered with excitement, but also with uncertainty. Would he be good enough? Would the great Plato even notice him? At first, Aristotle listened more than he spoke. He carefully observed every lecture and every debate. But as time passed, he began asking thoughtful questions. Unlike many students, he wasn't trying to prove he was smarter. He simply wanted to discover the truth. Plato admired this fearless curiosity. Slowly, Aristotle became one of the Academy's brightest students. Yet even while learning from the greatest teacher of his time, Aristotle started to think differently. He believed that truth should come from observing the real world, not only from ideas. The teacher who shaped a conqueror. When Aristotle joined Plato's Academy, he believed he had found the perfect place to learn. For nearly 20 years, he studied philosophy, mathematics, politics, ethics, and the natural world. Year after year, he became one of the Academy's brightest students. His classmates respected him. His teachers admired him. Even Plato recognized his extraordinary intelligence. But Aristotle was different from many other students. He respected his teacher deeply, yet he was not afraid to ask difficult questions. Plato believed that perfect truth existed in a world beyond what we could see. Aristotle believed something different. He thought people should first observe the real world, collect evidence, and then form conclusions. If you wanted to understand birds, you should study birds. If you wanted to understand governments, you should study governments. If you wanted to understand people, you should observe people. This simple idea would later become one of the foundations of modern science. Aristotle was not trying to defeat his teacher. He simply believed that truth was more important than tradition. The death of Plato. In 347 BC, Plato died. His death shocked the entire Greek world. Many people believed Aristotle would become the next leader of the Academy. After all, he had studied there for 20 years and was one of Plato's greatest students. But history took a different path. Someone else was chosen to lead the Academy. Historians still debate why. Some believe Aristotle's independent thinking made him an unpopular choice. Others think politics played an important role. Whatever the reason, Aristotle realized it was time to leave Athens. Sometimes, when one door closes, another opens to a much greater future. A new journey. Aristotle began traveling across the Greek world. Instead of staying in one place, he visited different cities, met scholars, studied governments, and carefully observed nature. He believed that the entire world was a classroom. Every village taught him something new. Every conversation offered another lesson. Every journey increased his knowledge. Then one day, an unexpected invitation arrived. It came from King Philip II of Macedon. The king wanted Aristotle to educate his 13-year-old son. That young prince was Alexander. Meeting young Alexander. From the very beginning, Aristotle realized that Alexander was no ordinary child. The prince was intelligent, fearless, and incredibly ambitious. He dreamed of becoming a great hero like Achilles. But dreams alone could never create greatness. They needed wisdom, discipline, and knowledge. Aristotle became Alexander's teacher. He taught him philosophy, science, geography, literature, ethics, politics, and public speaking. But more importantly, he taught him how to think. Instead of forcing Alexander to memorize facts, Aristotle encouraged him to ask questions. The classroom became a place of discussion, not simple repetition. Alexander admired his teacher. He challenged ideas, asked difficult questions, and learned quickly. Aristotle believed that knowledge was the greatest weapon any ruler could possess. A king should first rule with wisdom before using force. Those lessons stayed with Alexander throughout his life. Even years later, during military campaigns, Alexander carried books with him. Among his favorite possessions was a copy of Homer's Iliad, which Aristotle had helped him understand. Knowledge became as valuable to him as his sword. A student becomes king. Everything changed in 336 BC. King Philip II was assassinated. The entire kingdom was thrown into confusion. At only 20 years old, Alexander became the new king of Macedon. Many people believed he was too young to rule. His enemies expected him to fail. Instead, Alexander acted quickly. He defeated rebellions, secured his kingdom, and united Greece once again. Aristotle watched from a distance. His student was no longer a curious boy. He was becoming one of history's greatest leaders. Although Alexander prepared for conquest, Aristotle chose a different path. He had never wanted power or riches. His greatest passion had always been knowledge. There were still countless mysteries waiting to be explored. So Aristotle returned to Athens. But this time, he did not return as a student. He returned as a teacher with a dream of building a school unlike any the world had ever seen. His greatest discoveries were still ahead of him, the legacy that changed the world. While Alexander the Great was expanding his empire across Asia, Aristotle returned to Athens. Many people believed he would now enjoy a quiet life. But Aristotle was only getting started. He believed there were still countless mysteries waiting to be discovered. Instead of leading armies, he chose to lead minds. That decision would make him one of the most influential thinkers in human history. The birth of the Lyceum. Around 335 BC, Aristotle founded his own school called the Lyceum. Unlike Plato's academy, the Lyceum focused on observation and research. Students did not spend all their time sitting inside classrooms. They walked through gardens, studied animals and plants, examined rocks, discussed politics, explored literature, and asked questions about the world around them. Aristotle often taught while walking with his students. Because of this, his followers became known as the Peripatetics, meaning those who learn while walking. For Aristotle, learning was never limited to books. Nature itself was the greatest classroom. Every tree, every bird, and every conversation could teach an important lesson. The father of logic. Aristotle believed that every idea should be tested through careful reasoning. People should not believe something simply because everyone else believed it. They should ask questions, examine evidence, and think logically. He developed a system of reasoning that later became known as formal logic. One of his famous examples was simple. All humans are mortal. Socrates is a human. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. This method may seem obvious today, but it changed the way people solve problems. Even today, students of philosophy, law, mathematics, computer science, and artificial intelligence continue to study ideas that began with Aristotle. His greatest weapon was never a sword. It was logic, the scientist before modern science. Long before laboratories and modern technology existed, Aristotle carefully observed nature. He studied hundreds of animals, compared their behavior, and recorded what he discovered. Some of his conclusions were later proven wrong. But his method was revolutionary. Instead of accepting old myths, he encouraged people to observe the real world and collect evidence before reaching conclusions. That simple idea became one of the foundations of modern science. Even today, scientists follow a similar process. Observe, ask questions, test ideas, draw conclusions. More than 2,000 years later, Aristotle's approach is still used around the world. The secret of a good life. Aristotle was interested in more than science. He also asked one of life's biggest questions. What makes a person truly happy? Some people believed happiness came from wealth. Others believed it came from power or pleasure. Aristotle disagreed. A truly successful person develops good character and continues improving every day. His ideas still inspire millions of people around the world. The final years. As Alexander's empire continued to grow, political tensions increased in Athens. Many people disliked Macedonian rule. Because Aristotle had once taught Alexander, some began turning against him. When Alexander's influence weakened, Aristotle found himself in danger. Before leaving, he reportedly said, "I will not allow Athens to sin twice against philosophy." He moved to the city of Chalcis. Only a year later, in 322 BC, Aristotle died at the age of 62. Although the exact cause of his death remains uncertain, one thing was absolutely clear. His ideas would never die. A legacy that lives forever. After Aristotle's death, his students carefully protected his writings. Centuries passed. Empires rose and fell. Wars destroyed cities. Libraries disappeared. Yet many of Aristotle's books survived. His ideas influenced scholars across Europe, the Middle East, and beyond. Universities studied his philosophy. Scientists learned from his methods. Political thinkers debated his ideas. Teachers inspired new generations using his approach to learning. Very few people in history have shaped human thought as deeply as Aristotle. More than 2,300 years after his death, his influence can still be found in classrooms, universities, laboratories, courtrooms, and every place where people search for knowledge. What can we learn from Aristotle? Aristotle's life teaches us several timeless lessons. Never stop asking questions. Always look for evidence before accepting an idea. Learning is a lifelong journey. Great teachers can change the future. And true success is measured not only by achievement, but also by wisdom, integrity, and good character. One curious boy from a small town changed the way the world thinks. He never ruled an empire. He never led a great army. Yet his ideas became stronger than kingdoms and lasted longer than empires. That is the true power of knowledge. If you enjoyed learning about the incredible life of Aristotle while improving your English, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for English Orbit. Every week, we bring you inspiring biographies, historical stories, and fascinating mysteries in clear and easy English to help you improve your listening, vocabulary, and speaking skills. Thank you for watching. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep exploring the world through English.